do with bone, anything to do with muscles, your Achilles, no, tendons, that's it, tendons. Even people with kind of eye issues, thyroid, epilepsy, the straightening of the spine. So I think it was Richard Vobes that read out a testimonial from a lady that had a snapped neck at birth. And so, but she'd in 4 days the spine had moved back. I mean, it was horrifically painful for her for the first day, and she went back to bed. But on the 4th day, she was able to touch her spine with her left hand. She'd never been able to do that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wild Woman Podcast. I'm delighted to have Rachel Russell with me today. And I first came across Rachel, I think probably on the lovely Mark Atwood show, one of his podcasts a few years ago. No, it was prior to that. There was another podcast, but regardless, I was very taken with her energy. I said, she's like a fairy, and she seems to have so many ideas and so much going on. And that's why I asked her before we just hit record, had she Gemini somewhere in her chart? I seem to keep talking about astrology recently because I love it, and I just love all the different colors and flavors that we all are and bring to life. And that is Rachel. I mean, it's definitely, I asked her to just send me a little bit of background to herself so I have a flavor. And I went, whoa, I have never met someone who has what I would say, and I'll ask Rachel to talk about it, is it straight away came to me that every single one of her life experiences has all been so important in who and what she is doing now. It just was like, wow, how each experience has led to the next. But I'm just going to pick a couple of lines to read from it because there is no way I could sum her up. I'll leave her to do that. I won't do her justice, but today this, I suppose, gives a nice flavor. She's a speaker, a facilitator, an intuitive guide, and she works with people across all walks of life who are ready to reconnect with their own rhythm, which love, love, love that word, release outdated labels, live in their natural flow to enable the next phase of humanity to flip back into utopia and to remember who we are as powerful, magical, and ever evolving souls. Oh my God. I think I just light up when I read that. So thank you, Rachel. Welcome. Welcome. It's so lovely to have you here and your lovely stove in the background.
Thank you very much, Silly. It's so lovely to connect, isn't it? And the magic is everywhere. It really is.
Yeah. You said something beautiful there at the beginning before we record something about the miracles. Can you say that again? I just said it was so beautiful. The miracles, something that has come to you in the last years around surrounding yourself with our passion, following your passion, is it?
Yes. Well, yeah, because we can manifest through intention. And I think, like do you know, like The Secret came out and it was all kind of like, imagine your hand around the steering wheel, and it was all kind of very egocentric. And I think, yes, you can want lots of things, but what do we need? And I think, energies and wherever we are in life shows us, what our passions are. And what our passions are is so individual and so unique to every single person. But when I go to passion, when I go to inspiration, it equals miracles. Just miracles happen. You're driving down the motorway, you're going to meet X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden, it's 11:11, and it's there's all these double numbers everywhere. And it illustrates to me that I'm on the right path. And so I'm always asking for signs, and kind of I observe things a little bit more these days in terms of kind of what happens in every moment and where are we. And I ended up having a good laugh at myself many years ago when I was getting divorced, actually. And the best way I could cope with it was to do 2 hours of meditation every single morning, and then I'd go for a jog. So I'd get up at like 4:45 in the morning and do 2 hours of meditation, go jogging, and then I'd go on the tube, because it was another thing was coping with London and all that nonsense. But the 2 hours of meditation, and it wasn't, I wouldn't call it normal meditation, and I don't know really what meditation is. It was just being still in my thoughts, not trying to stop my thoughts, because that's pretty much impossible. Your mind goes off on this little train, And you suddenly think, oh my goodness, how did I, that's hilarious. How on earth did I get to that thought? Or sometimes that is not my thought. Where did that come from? It was something maybe slightly negative that had led me on a kind of a train of thought, the consequences. And you end up kind of having a laugh at yourself because we think the most funniest things sometimes, and it's our subconscious that really rules us, to a certain extent.
Mm,
And it
yes.
was, all these thoughts that were coming, and the train of thoughts, but just stopping myself and just having a laugh, and getting a sense of humor about yourself, like where on earth did that come from? And I have no idea. But I tell you what,
Mm.
it was magic, because I was able to kind of really focus in on who I was. So I went off to do Mental Toughness University. I did all the brain retraining. It was a John Assaraf, because I followed him, and then I learned about Joe Vitale from The Secret people, and Joe Vitale had done the Ho'oponopono with Dr. Hugh Len. And so I popped over to Ireland to do a course in Ho'oponopono, which actually aided all my divorcing anyway. That was the kind of start of that one. But yeah, it was,
This all came out of you getting divorced, this stage. Is
yeah, yeah,
just incredible. But I mean, that sounds like, to even have that level, I mean, of focus to go to get over my divorce. I sat down, I meditated for 2 hours, and then and I went for a run. So you obviously have a very active, well, you were able to sit and meditate for 2 hours, but you obviously are very focused when you decide, okay, that understanding of
yeah,
where I
yeah.
put my focus is,
Yeah.
how I'm creating my life.
You can just get so busy with everything, because life just gets busy. And I think when we just stop and do nothing, because your brain the whole time is telling you that, oh, you haven't done that yet, or you need to stop meditating because it would be really interesting to watch this again, or I haven't done that, or oh, I'm really tired, I actually really want to go back to sleep again. But I would just sit there. Yes, sometimes I would fall asleep sitting up, and sometimes I would just laugh at myself and all my funny, crazy thoughts.
But it sounds like you're coming off, what I hear there when I listen to is the either living on autopilot or living more consciously. You said a lot of our unconscious beliefs are running, all the unconscious underneath. And it's a very, isn't it? Once you sort of click into that or log in, as I heard someone say, you can like, don't, if you log into all of this, all of these thoughts going on,
Yeah.
you can be carried off, as you said, in a million directions. So it's a lovely way to look at it, the sort of being nearly the observer. And what am I consciously? Did it shift? Was that always there for you, that sort of awareness around living very consciously versus, you
Mm.
know, your
Yeah,
unconscious
I,
running the
I,
show?
I grew up with very religious parents that were missionaries in Brazil. So then I learned English when I was 8, but both my parents were kind of interrogators, and it wasn't until I read, what was it, the Celestine Prophecy, that I
Yes.
realized that both of my parents were interrogators, and so I became a double aloof, and I wouldn't talk. I just watched people. And it was one of my friends. It was when I was growing and smoking weed, basically, and we'd have our chats through the night. And one of them said, you're a complete aloof. And I was like, I didn't even know what a luth was. So anyway, through discussing it, I just decided to change it, because one thought can change your life. And so I made a conscious effort that I wasn't going to be aloof. I was going to be, present. Because every time we speak, we become vulnerable,
Mm.
and it's so important, that we do allow that vulnerability, and that allows the other person to be vulnerable with us. And then we can actually have a real conversation, about love, about the way that we feel. How do we support each other? How can we help each other get through these phases, and things that maybe have helped me could help other people?
Mm.
I can't reach everybody, but I could reach another person that could then reach somebody else. There was a lady that I met recently who was having all sorts of difficulties, and she was involved in alcohol and drugs and all sorts of things. But I can't reach those people that were kind of either heroin addicts or whatever they were, and what kind of difficulties they'd got themselves into, because they don't generally come into my auric field. I don't meet them. but they can, you know, so it's this connection that we have through all our connections, and we are one, you know, in the sense that everything is internal, and that what was it called, the self-identity through Ho'oponopono, that was like, ooh, okay, so everything you're experiencing is mine as well to experience, because I can go through that, and I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. It creates this air of identification, because everything in the world is, if we see it and we understand it, we have the same programming, you know. And once we cleanse that within us, and it wasn't until I read the story about Ho'oponopono and how, you know, that whole
Can you explain a little bit of that for anyone who hasn't heard it? Yeah, because I know the prayer, but I haven't heard the story of it. That would be
okay. But it was so there was this hospital, not hospital, a prison. It was the worst prison in the world. It had the worst psychotic killers and all the rest of it. So plants wouldn't grow, paint wouldn't stick to the walls. They had problems with staffing and all sorts of things. And this chap came along as a psychologist to go and, you know, be in the prison and do his thing, you know. But the conventional way is to meet all these inmates and all the rest of it. But he didn't meet them. He decided to read their files and feel what had gone on with the stories, and he would cleanse the story. So he would cleanse inside what he understood as the programming that they'd gone through. So, you know, the Katie Byron, loving what is. So for people that have been abused and things, that it was a big turning point in my life when I realized that, you know, people are just trying to give love, but they have their own version of what they think love is because of what they've been taught and what they've gone through in life. But okay, so he took their files and he cleansed them. And bit by bit, I mean, 6 years later, long story short, the whole facility, the whole prison was completely shut because it wasn't required. Everyone had started taking, oh, I'm getting chills. Everyone had started taking responsibility for their own lives, you know, and it grabbed me, and I thought, there's something in, I don't get it. I don't understand, you know, what this is all about, because obviously having kind of like religious parents and
Yes.
growing up with the church, and my dad being this kind of like, you've got to do the, I hated the podium kind of side of things, because everyone has their own journey to go through. And I found him such a hypocrite in certain ways, you know. We all ask for, you know, in my opinion, I think we choose our parents and how we come into this world and what we need to learn. And that was definitely, I don't want to go down that road, basically. There is something magical about this world. And yes, there is this, you know, this almighty energy, that there's an intelligence, a real intelligence to this world. Yeah, and the miracles, you know, that I spoke of, you know, when we go to passion, when we go to our inspiration, that just everything falls in line. You know, like sometimes I can't plan things because I know that it will just fall in place completely. But the fact that this whole facility, this whole prison was completely shut down purely because everyone started taking responsibility for themselves. And I thought, yeah, so I've practiced Ho'oponopono ever since. And there are other methods as well, but it's based in love. You know, and there's been a real lack of love. We've been taken over for thousands of years, you know.
I know. And we even use, I love what you say about that has become a drive. And I had to learn that. It's so interesting how you say with your father. I believe that too, and everybody I know has their own perspective. And it depends where you are in your life. You might go, I didn't choose this, because there are days I go, did you really choose this? But the minute you say that, when you just said that there about your father, it's like we're living in a world of duality, so you have to experience one to know the other. So how could you know that, like, this couldn't be woken up maybe in you unless you experienced, as you said, the podium and the religion, to go, this isn't for me. And they're like little signposts, aren't they? You know, it's like little signposts going, okay, this is the path Rachel's on, and
Yeah.
whoops, she's over here. No, 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 this isn't her path. We'll veer her off. But it might be for someone else. And isn't this
Yeah.
the beauty when we come back to our passion? I am passionate about that too. That
Yeah.
when each
Yeah.
of us follow our own passion and our beat and our rhythm, you know, when you use the words rhythm, we just light up the world for everyone else, not just ourselves. Isn't that
Exactly.
the key? It isn't selfish. You know, every time I hear people talking about being selfish to, you know, maybe, you know, do what you want to do, but it's coming from a different place, isn't it? It's not this ego, you know, you're doing it from a place of love when you've found that, when you've met that.
Because, you know, in every day there's always something to fix, isn't there? Every single day. And I know
Mm.
through, you know, either health or through emotion, you know, there is always something that we're working on. You know, we've all got individual lives, you know, life happens, you know, whether it's, you know, people that are ill around us, whether it's, you know, but the magic that comes, I think a really lovely example was I was having to take my father, who was, you know, up to the hill with this recent thing, and he got cancer, and so he wanted to go to his what would you call it, radiation therapy, whether you call that therapy or not, I don't know. Anyway, but I was praying, you know, or ho'oponoponoping the whole way, which is that I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So I was driving him, and we got to the hospital, you know, and I didn't have my mask on. It's all right, Dad. I'm whatever the word was. What was it?
Exempt or something, is it?
Oh,
No, exempt, or was there some word? Yeah,
exempt.
people
Yeah,
got
it's all right. I'm exempt. Don't worry. I'll explain myself. But as we went into the hospital, the Queen's Hospital, you know, just thought this is ridiculous. There was this huge grand piano with a note on top saying, "Please play me." And so, and I love playing the piano. I love cheering people up. So I dragged the last chair that was available in the waiting room. It was full. And for an hour, whilst he went off and had his radiation, I was able to cheer everybody up, you know, and people the staff were coming out of their rooms and videoing it. And there was a couple that came down the corridor and sang the Snowman with me, you know, just all these lovely little things that happened, and you change the atmosphere completely.
Mm.
Those kind of things.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's just like if you embody that yourself, which is a job in itself, it does shift, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
shifts
yeah.
everything around us. That is how powerful we are, isn't it? It's how to, and it's either the unconscious, as you said, running the show. That was a whole new thing for me as well, just realizing, oh, I didn't even, suddenly this awareness that something I believed as a result of things that happened in my childhood that they weren't all awful. But it's just realizing that, isn't it? We're sort of from the minute we come in, we're sort of taken over, whether it's culture, society, systems. And it sounds like for you, when I was reading there, you really well, I'm guessing now, I'm asking you this, a turning point. You said that you were, I think, expelled. Was it from school and you went to a boarding school? And your sort of this independent spirit burst out. So yeah,
It
was
was,
that
I think it was more the rebellious side of me. Like,
rebellious? Okay, yeah.
absolutely, do I? Yeah, no, no. And
Did you feel that as a child? Like, did you
oh
feel
yeah,
growing up very, oh, like tight, or how would you
yeah.
experience what it was like for you
I,
growing up?
I think at the time I physically hated my parents. I hated them because of all the emotional turmoil that I'd gone through. I did blame them. And I remember going to two different boarding schools. One of them had the carpet around the swimming pool, and it was very posh. And I said to my mother, I said, if you send me here, you'll never see me again. So I was very
What
adamant.
age were you then?
13. But you know, there's all sorts of different experiences that I'd gone. I tried to commit suicide at 12, and I was in the hospital for 3 days. And this isn't a poor me story or anything, but you know, and there was a baby called Kimberly that was in there, and the mother wasn't there. The mother was up, I don't know whether she was too busy and the nurses were too busy to look at, and it just cried the whole time. And the only time it would stop crying is if you held this baby. And so I ended up holding this baby for 3 days, and it gave me a reason to live, and it was quite magical. So my parents bought me a horse that, you know, so that I could look after something. But yeah, but then getting expelled from school, I went over to boarding school, but I was so looking forward to it. And then I had my holidays with my
Doesn't
teachers.
sound so the opposite. Most people are, oh my God, I don't want to go to boarding school. And what was it? What was it about that shift from your older school and going to boarding school? Because that would sound to me more repressive almost.
Wow. Do you know, well, normal school was, and I see it as the buildings in which they've created for these schools. I mean, there's Lucius, I mean, that's a whole nother side of thing to that. But the way in which they construct it is for the aura, you know, and you're taught to fold your arms, you know. And this diminishing, you are not individual, you are, it's all the same, you know, and we're going to teach you that, you know, this profession is your label, and you know there was all that nonsense, and I hated it, and I was very dyslexic, so learning for me was really, really difficult until I was at university, and then I figured out how to, you know, cure and sort out all the dyslexia side of things. But there was a process of I didn't want to go to church every single day, and I didn't want to kneel in front of my bed. And I remember my mum, because I was bullied coming back from Brazil because I was black and I couldn't speak English and I was learning English, and so the children didn't understand me. There was a girl that gave people sweets if they wouldn't talk to me, you know, and for 2 years my whole life was horrible and I didn't enjoy it at all. So there were all sorts of different things going on. I mean, I'm so grateful for that because I'm very inclusive of people now who feel left out. So it's given me awareness, you know, and that is magic. That's the inspiration that I've got from that. So you take something that is incredible, you know, from a lack, whatever we call it, you know, and turn it into something good. So where was I going with this? But yeah, so at
Or
school.
free spirit, or the shift from, maybe the normal school yet into boarding school, and how that.
And boarding school was, you know, it was full of free thinkers. That there was, you never heard the phrase, I can't do that, I can't afford it. You know, there was just all these possibilities. Yes, there were still the labels of, you know, becoming a vet or becoming a, you know, something along the lines of, you know, what society deems, you know, responsible, or, you know, doing something good for society, doing your bit, you know, kind of thing. But I really enjoyed. It was in Baldersby Park in Yorkshire, and so I called it the Sandcastle, and so we'd stay, you know, because that for the aura is incredible. You know, it helps in that in the growth side of things. And for me, I didn't have to go to church, and I literally I could hide in the cupboard on a Sunday with my Walkman on, as long as I made my bed and everything, and it was all fine. But I'd hide in the cupboard with my Walkman on, listening to music, you know, and I didn't have to actually go to church. And I found that really exciting, you know. It's just the little things in life, it really is. But yeah,
Yeah, and that sort of fed, yeah, obviously.
yeah.
This free spirit. Like, can you just mention as well, like, it sounds like so many gifts for you, like between music, you talk about music and then dyslexia. How did those sort of come together? Or was dyslexia just sort of, was that the sort of, with reading, or how did that present itself? Or how do you see it now? Because I know you've gone on and done a lot of work around that.
It was firstly my memory. I mean, when I was at boarding school, I would literally be taught trigonometry every single day. By the next day, I'd forgotten it. The next day, I'd forgotten it. Next day, and it was just, and I couldn't understand how I just could not retain information. And it was actually being jabbed up hugely, so I was born in England, moved to Brazil, but then coming back. I mean, I was so ill as a child, from all these, must have been these things
Mm,
basically that
mm.
they give to you. But both my brothers were fine. They were born out in Brazil, and I was the only one that was born in England. But
Ah, okay.
but I think going to and from the country. So yeah, so being very ill, you know, not having and dyslexia, I think the music side of things, it was so logical for me. And I moved to boarding school, there were 30 piano rooms. It was a music boarding school. And so when you did homework time at night, so you'd have to be, you know, I think it was like 2 hours, it felt like forever. Two homework in the evening. So you had your whole school, and then you had your dinner, and then you had prep, which was your homework time. But if you played an instrument, you were allowed out for the last half hour to go and play musical instruments. I mean, not that I always played them, because I'd go into the toilet, open the window, and go and smoke on the top of the roofs, you know. But that was my
Oh, you're
version.
definitely a rebel. There was definitely a rebellious spirit.
Yeah. I am not. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't this world. But yeah, and then there was this music software that started coming out, and actually I ended up teaching the teacher how to use the software, because I got so interested in it, and how to kind of do all these different tracks on top of each other. It was Logic Audio 1.0. And if I was ever missing for a lesson, I was either smoking somewhere or I was in the music block. you know, doing something with all the pianos, and then we'd swap instruments as well. So I ended up playing the flute, the cello, you know, the violin. I started with the violin at 8, and then later, when I was a teenager, I had a lucid dream and learned the circular breathing with the didgeridoo. I mean, it's brilliant. But I learned to play the piano with my eyes shut, so that I could learn something with passion. Because I thought, you know, we were learning about all these people, and you know, like Beethoven, and you know, all of them. They were either deaf or blind or something. And I was thinking, well, what happens if I ever lose my eyesight? You know, I've got to be able to learn something that I can do with passion, that I don't give up with life, because, you know, I mean, I'd gone through all this other stuff before, you know. So I learned Beethoven. I mean, I didn't get taught the piano, but I could watch and copy.
Mm,
So I learned Beethoven with my eyes shut, and it just evoked so much passion, so much from my depths. And
mm.
I just fell in love with it, and it was so fast on the fingers, you know. So it sounds, you know, egotistically, it was. I feel amazing, you know, because I can move my fingers really fast, and but you know,
But it sounds like you're one of the, well, I don't know if we all are, but you know, that sort of, you were ahead of your time in terms of really high sensitivity children that are coming in. You know, there's different labels I know put on, like rainbow indigo, all of these children that sort of process. And I know there's a lot of, I had never even heard of the word neurodiversity, but I know it's used more commonly now, that in terms of how we process the list. When I listen to you there talking about music and how, rather than in a very logical way, like information coming in a very structured, like the way you were saying, how can I not remember all of this? But what I'm
mm,
nearly hearing is, well, we're not really maybe designed, or we're all unique in our design, and that
yeah,
wasn't the design for how you took information in.
yeah,
So how did you understand that? Because I know it just, I think it's very useful for people listening, particularly, and I know you talk about neuroscience and intuition. Did that lead you into sort of work that bridges that, you know, the sort of more logical and the intuitive? Would you say
yeah,
it's somewhere in those right brain, left brain merging or
very
balancing?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, a right brain person can literally, it can land an aeroplane whilst you know, building the runway. A left brain person will want everything perfect, and say they'll never go live with a business, for example, because it's never perfect. So you kind of need
Mm,
both. We're never one or the other. Yeah, we are more one, but we still
yes.
have aspects of the other. And for me, when I heard about how to sort out dyslexia, it was all about retraining the brain, and it's spinning. So spinning is absolutely incredible, but it has so many different other aspects to it, you know, because there's, you know, like the whirling dervishes, because the whirling dervishes would spin certain way. But I think, you know, like the reflexology side of things, so your right foot covers your left side of your body,
Yes.
and
Yes.
your left foot the opposite. So when we spin one way, we're do you call it, stimulating one side of our brain.
Yes.
But when you spin, so it's not necessarily just the spinning. The spinning also creates vortexes, you know, there's that healing side of things. But when you stop spinning and you regather your center of gravity, it is stimulating, and I don't confess to understand it, but it's stimulating something at the back of the brain. And that actually sorted out all my dyslexia issues in 6 weeks. So I built myself a wobble board, and I wobbled on it. And when I got good at wobbling on it, I'd put my hands on the wall. I get the wobble board up against the wall, and I'd close my eyes. And there it is. Oh my goodness, it is so giggly. It is so much fun.
Oh, I must
Because
get
it
one of
really
those.
sends you all over the place, and your center of gravity is all over but it stimulates it so incredibly. And if people are scared about the physical moving and spinning
Yes.
and all, there are other ways, and one is throwing a ball from hand to hand, but actually watching the ball, because actually you feel quite dizzy just watching the ball. And they're all different things in which we could all, you know, do. But it makes brainy people brainier. It makes dyslexic
Mm.
people non-dyslexic, you know, but they don't teach you this. And so when I was at uni, and they were, you know, doing all these weird, I don't know, like practicing spelling. It's like okay, in order to get over the fear, you just need to think about it. It's like it doesn't do anything for it. You know, trying to spell something over and over again just reiterates, you know, that you can't spell it, or I'm just going to try and put it into my memory. But the spinning seems to do something completely different, and literacy, numeracy, memory skills all massively increased. So I
Wow.
thought, well, I can remember everything. I don't forget anything. I can spell everything. Like, there's literally nothing stopping me, because it was always oh, I can't, I don't know if I can do that. I'm dyslexic, and standing up in front of people and reading, was like, oh,
But you know what you've described to me, and it's even like when you said about playing the piano and without, and closing your eyes, is that we're sort of, it's opening up this sort of nearly what I find like this, like a cage around your mind. So we're in this very sort of limited way, and we're not designed to process or function like that. That when you open it up, however you want to look at it spiritually, or your inspiration, or however, we are inspired, is not in that sort of very fixed repeat, repeat. I often feel like if you think the great music when you play, or when I wrote a book, it came from just sitting in this flow coming through, this flow came through. And then, yes, I had to structure, okay, I have to sit down and write. I can't just sort of, but it would never have come from the way, you know what I mean? It just seems like it's so important, that understanding. We're not really opened up, are we, to that way of learning, and the wobble board as an example. Like it's,
exactly. But it improved my left brain side of
yes.
it, because and another trait is,
Your
right brain.
left brain, sorry, I always get this confused. Left
Logic.
brain is the logic and the right brain. I'm left-handed,
I
so I think
suppose,
I'm more connected to
like how you remember left and right.
yes.
Because if people that think it's left, it's like, no, that doesn't spell the L. So if I do it that way.
Oh,
But yeah, left is logic, and right
yes.
is your creative side. But yeah, so the logic. So a right brain person will listen to audiobooks and can absorb the information through the audio. A left brain person would much rather be a bookworm and physically reading. And for me, that it just tires me out, just physically reading. So when I'm
Mm.
getting the business cases from the teams, I'm asking for an audio version, please, so that I can listen to it over and over and over again, and understand and think about, what pieces are missing from this puzzle. Because I ended up being a consultant, a project manager, and
Yeah, take us through, because I'd love to hear about the projects and what you're doing now. Because I just get a sense from you like where we're headed, and I want to ask you about that, and sort of the role you're playing. Because I think the more that we talk, it's like what you said, firing up your passion and focusing on that. That's what gives it energy to me. We need to give it sort of space and really amplify it, because we're hearing so much of all the awful things that are happening in the world, and there's so many magical things. So where did it go? So after school, and you don't have to take me through everything you did, but like what where has it brought you? Because I know you've worked in consultancy, you've worked in horsemanship, I mean, there's so much you've done, which is obviously essential for what you're doing now. It's like, it sounds like it was divinely designed to bring you to where you are now. Um,
grounding. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So if we can all look at our lives as sometimes they're challenging, I think it's really helpful, isn't it, when we can understand.
Oh, the trauma that we can go through is incredible, actually.
Mm.
When you're in the middle of it, it's not fun. It never is, but there's a way in which you can work around that and see it as all internal, and just give love. And there's all sorts of, I've had trauma therapy, which really started changing things for me, because I'd carried, this angst for so long, and I'd buried it from being a teenager, and it was like, I just shut it down, and I'll get on with my life. But
But
all,
that's, yeah, and that,
it all rises up, and you just got to deal with it. And I did, and I'd asked lots of different people, about all these different therapies, and always keeping an eye on kind of like which one would I pick if I really needed to sort myself out. And actually, I met this beautiful lady, and it was 3 hours of trauma therapy, literally working with the aura, working with kind of writing things, drawing things, burning them, but then coloring in kind of my own aura and feeling it and talking. It was literally 3 hours, and I felt incredible afterwards. I mean, it was magical. I didn't have to talk about the issue, go through all the
mm,
trauma, because I think you step into these kind of environments, and you basically you understand that you've got not just 5 issues, you've got 50 issues. Um, you know,
mm.
but, so
I
that you've
didn't
been
want to open that can of
20
worms.
years. Yeah, exactly. So
But
many
that's
cans.
often what keeps people from it, I think.
And I find that quite sad, but everybody they, they're all on their own journey. But I'd kept an eye on kind of like different ways in which I could resolve things. And so I did the trauma therapy, but I could ground so easily, and I could give love to a tree, and all these birds would just flock to it, or I would just have hovering birds above me that it just, okay, this isn't normal. And the chickens were going mad, at this point. But so through the trauma therapy and building teams as a consultant, I mean, I'm going all over the place here, but working with people, through my dyslexia, I realized that I was above average, with working with people. And I am a Libra, is my main star sign. So I'm quite I wouldn't even say level-headed, because I'm a right brain. So it's kind of side, always trying to equalize, but kind of being a bit extreme in some
Yes.
ways. But I've always approached things a very different way to most people, like the natural horsemanship. I didn't agree with shoes on their feet, and I learned to trim the hooves, and I decided not to put the metal bars in their face, and learn the horse's language, rather than us imposing our own kind of whatever it
Mm.
is that we do with horses. So, and then through the project management in kind of working with different teams, I always said, like, this is the way in which most companies and most people operate, but I say it's chocolate, and we melt it so that we're all actually working from the same level, except we've all got we're all a different cog, doing our little bit, but we
Yes.
are all equal. There is nobody that's above or below. I am no guru. I'm just living my life, but I embody certain things. So I was thinking about this the other day. I play people on YouTube that kind of really evoke, that beauty, that inspiration. It doesn't really matter what they're saying, but they almost bring this kind of energy. There was this chap, Ken Wheeler, and he talks about all sorts of things. And I don't understand everything he says, but he's very interesting as a person. But he talks about all sorts of very famous people throughout the world, and Tesla, and how Einstein got it all wrong, but he just evokes this kind of environment. And I know you can you can buy like air from where monks have been meditating, and you open it up and it changes the whole energetics of
Wow.
the room. Or you
Yeah.
paint, like Mark Atwood has been using the minerals on his walls.
Yes, in the healing center. I know, I've been up there. I know it's amazing. And the town is even different. I mean, I'd say that to people. It's in Boyle and Roscommon, the west coast of Ireland, if you're in Ireland or want to pay a visit. And it's phenomenal because they now opened up a spa and they've had their first retreats there. But I've been up in numerous times. But the last time I went up, and I said, God, the road, and this is the impact we can have if you're, listen, this is how powerful, this is the consciousness and the energy. I usedn't feel that, but when I went into the town, I feel happier, I feel lighter. And I put it down firstly to the people, which it is too, because of their energy. But suddenly there's flowers where there weren't flowers. And across the road, what I remembered as sort of a derelict building is this sort of an arts centre. And then everything looked different. So this is and Mark had said that I think it is to do with, yeah, I don't understand it, but I just know the impact it has on me and how I feel. I think it's isn't it? It's the water and how he's done a recent show on it anyways, but and that's running
Minerals
through the building, the minerals, yeah.
Minerals are intelligent, water
Mm.
intelligence, ether,
Yes.
plasma.
Mm.
There are so many different things that normal science, because you can't see it, it doesn't exist apparently, but it's the same with the magnetic bowls, there is an energy to this. And where's my
Yes, I have one here. We'll just talk because Rachel has so many different inventions. So, in terms of what you're working on, what is your passion currently? Because you're involved, I know, in so many projects, and maybe talk about a few of them. And I know I get so excited when I talk to people like you because I go, this is the future. What's happening now this is what we're creating and more. I think many people like you maybe have come from the future. I don't know where you've come from, but you've come from somewhere with knowledge that we need to get us there. Even though I know it's probably all now and time is an
Yeah.
illusion. But yeah, I get that feel from you. It's like, so yeah. Do
Well,
please.
I did on the 11th of January this year, actually, I did this QHHT, which I thought was quite magical. The quantum,
Quantum healing, isn't it, for anyone who hasn't heard of it? Quantum
yeah.
healing
And
hypnosis technique.
you're supposed to essentially go back through your lives, basically, and assuming it's human lives, that's kind of what I thought, might happen. But no, I was under the ocean, everything, all our beings, whoever we were, whatever we were pulsing. And it was just this love, and my eyes at the time, my eyes were streaming because the beautiful divine love that I felt, and this pulsing, it was magical. And that's the foundation of who we are. That is who we are as humans, and our internal light. So we are our ego, we are our soul, we are our physicality, but we are so much more. And it's encompassing all those things, and that's why I love going to the passion side of things for the miracles, because what for me makes me tick isn't the same as everybody. So listening to something that makes you just go off in your imagination into the most beautiful realms. And so recently I've been helping and working with different teams, basically, to restructure the British Isles, basically. So I basically.
How did you get this image? I know you mentioned it before that you were here. Well, part of your work is to restructure the spinal column of the British Isles, and some people might say, "What is she?" And then others will go, "Great, go, Rachel. We need you to
Yeah.
do that." How
Well,
did that come about? Just tell us how that came about,
oh my goodness. Well,
or did it come as a message, or how did you?
I don't. I'm trying to think how it all occurred. So there's always been like if I've had an illness or an issue, we've so Tony and I, we got together, we lockdown love kind of thing. We reconnected.
Lockdown love.
Lockdown love, yeah. So we reconnected after
That's a
20 odd
book.
years of
That's a
knowing.
book.
Yeah, well, we lost contact. We reconnected, and kind of, yeah. So we fell in love, and we've been together ever since. So it's over 5 years now with the lockdown love. But he's a double Gemini, born the same day as Trump, but he's a genius. He's a genius behind the scenes, and I'm the right-brained one, and I'm very fire, and like, he keeps me grounded, which is beautiful. Unique grounding
Yes.
within, but yeah, so I got black mold in my lungs. So we started making the Bob Beck machines so that we could make our own colloidal silver and blood cleansing. And then we thought, well, we could build these for other people. So on eBay, we started selling them. And I didn't really want to go back into the consultancy because everyone was just, it was just so sleepy. I couldn't.
What type of consultancy were you doing?
So I was doing digital consultancy. So I went and helped Royal Bank of Scotland redo their internet banking. Mercedes-Benz, we were doing a way in which you could build your own car, but we had massive teams. I had to sack over 300 people in one case because they were learning to code on the jobs and there was no kind of foundation, and it was all over the place. So I had to sort it all out. Avon Cosmetics, kind of 56 countries in 9 months. And there was.
And all from someone who was dyslexic. It just shows when you, isn't it just amazing that, wow.
Sorting, that was the crux of it. I mean, there are so many different aspects to it, but when I realized that I didn't have the issues of being dyslexic anymore, it was like a freedom ticket. Like, what would you like to do? And I was looking at jobs, because I need a decent income. I want to have a really good, life. And so I thought, I'll do the internet computing. So I did all the programming languages and learned all the programming language, Java, which was quite, because it's all
My
full
God.
of arguments, basically. And I thought, and once I knew it, I understood it. I then consulted so that no one could pull the wool over my eyes. I knew what how long something might take in order to accomplish it. So if someone said it will take me 3 months, I'm like, well, I think I could find someone to do it in a week and a half, actually. So no thanks. But so I I was good at building teams, and I was good at working with people, and good at inspiring others, and I really enjoyed it, because there was so much to accomplish everywhere you go. But then in the lockdown love, we were wanting to help fix other people's issues, so the colloidal silver, what there was the difference between, you know, what ionic colloidal silver was and what normal colloidal silver was, and I didn't even realize there was this difference, you know, because colloidal silver is like icebergs and your body can't really absorb it very easily, can't get rid of it. Ionic colloidal silver you can't see with the naked eye, but it's minute, and so the body can easily absorb it and get rid of it. So we were making these kits. I mean, it was 125 quid for both machines, basically, with all the silver and everything. And I was doing all the videos of how to make it yourself. But the colloidal silver, because it is quite expensive, and you could basically make it for pennies.
Just explain for anyone who hasn't heard of how you use colloidal silver, what it's used for. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
No, sorry. But so I used it in a nebulizer, and because I'd got the black mold and I just had no energy. So when you nebulize with the colloidal silver, it fixed my lung issue in like 3 days, and I had all my energy back, and it was magical. And so we
doing,
did.
Rachel, what is it doing exactly, the colloidal silver? I don't understand the.
Colloidal silver it's basically electrified silver in pure water. So you electrify it so that it and silver is so magical for us. An electrified silver, and I don't understand why. And
I know,
Tony
but
will tell you all
it's working. I know, we don't need to. Someone else can.
he's the scientist behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But he's great, you know, like when I interject,
Good team.
like, I'll just say a sentence and it makes no sense, and then he gives all the background.
Yeah.
But silver, the silver is magical in so many different ways, but when it's electrified, it can help heal COPD. So you'd put your solution into your nebulizer and you would just breathe it in, basically. And you breathe it in and hold your breath, you know, approximately 12 seconds.
Yeah.
But there's other ways to do it. So like oregano, you can get inhalers with oregano in it, but the oregano melts plastic as well. So if you think of all the microplastics that we all have within our blood, you know, that can then help heal all the and dissolve the microplastic.
Yeah.
As
Very
well as
powerful. I use
yeah.
the natural. I use the doTerra oils, oregano, and it's like an antibiotic. It's like so powerful, but you have to be careful because it burns. So you've got to be really,
yeah. And castor oil. I mean, mixing it with a mixer oil, you know, castor oil or what is it called? Coconut oil. There's
coconut oil is good. Yeah, that you can.
but in the belly button, Crohn's is really helpful for Crohn's, you know, to pop it into your belly button, because that's where life starts, you know, it's where everything's sprung from.
Yeah.
You can access all those veins. But yeah, so going back to going back to the colloidal silver and the blood cleansing, and the blood cleansing helped people that were whatever you call it. Being careful with YouTube.
Yes, whereas, and if you're listening, it's anyone who got something in their arm, and different. Yeah.
So and it would almost, as far as I could understand it, it would stop anything actually connecting in the blood with any antenna, and so they wouldn't then get all these issues that they were experiencing. So that was magical, and it took us. And so there was also, you know, the invention of what David
Yeah,
Lapointe.
can you explain a little bit? So I got a beautiful primer cube delivered from Rachel, 2 of them from the UK, and I've been sleeping with it probably too well for sometimes I'm going, how many hours? No, I mean, there are other things probably going on, but this is really, isn't it? You might explain. So if you're not watching, you can watch, or Rachel will explain what it does, but it's a beautiful, it's a magnetic primer cube, isn't it? That's really good for pain. Is that so? You've designed and made them with your inventor partner, Tony?
No. So it was David Lapointe that had come up with this invention.
Originally, yes, yes.
Yeah, so he'd had the vision from God.
Mhm.
However we say that. But yeah, so he was instructed to create it, but the primer cube was one that span, and he had that working perfectly. And what we wanted to do was just literally make the actual the PrimerField bowl, because the cube is the one that spins, and this is the
Okay.
PrimerField bowl.
Yes.
So the bowl was then going to be cheaper to create. So we needed a 3D printer and we needed the magnets, but it took us about 6 months to save up the money for the magnets because they were so expensive. They were, £1 each. So it was they were expensive at the time because we were just we were yellow sticker shopping and we were being creative with things. And anyway, so we started doing that and sharing them with just a few kind of friends so that we could find out, how is this really going to help people and what does it help with? And some of the magic that's come from it is that when it spins, it's not good for epilepsy. And epilepsy is you have more attack. I don't know what you call them. They're not attacks. There anyway. It brings on
Fits,
epilepsy.
the epileptic fits, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So and then it helps with the heart as well. So, but there's the spinning one has a bigger toroidal field. So it's I suppose it's like the way in which the earth works and the way in which our cells work. And from the biggest thing to the smallest thing, it all operates in the same way. But yeah, so we started sharing them with friends and finding out that it sorted out, our friend's curved back. She'd cured herself from multiple sclerosis, and she said it had this kind of strange pulling effect, and it was actually straightening her spine. And I said, "That's amazing."
The magnet is it's forming this field, and it's sort of helping with your own energetic field, I suppose, straightening it out in a way or clearing things. Yeah. Because the minute I put it, I'll just again, if people haven't seen it, but I'll put all links to Rachel's because you're selling these as well, aren't you, through your website?
Yeah.
So
we started building them.
Yeah.
And it was actually so with Mark Atwood, I'd gone to he was showing
his mother, I think, used did one
yeah.
well.
He was showing his tour around America. He did his it's brilliant. It's absolutely fabulous. But his mum had gone and she was using this pillow to kind of prop herself up and try and be a bit comfier. And I said, we need to swap that pillow for one of these. Oh, sounds interesting. Anyway, so she said she'd be up for it. So I sent her one. She got it just before Christmas. And then just over a month later, she'd come off all her painkillers. And it was magical because, he was able to, I don't know, it was just lovely that she'd got rid of all her arthritis and had came off all her painkillers.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, because it's anything to do with bone, anything to do with muscles, your Achilles, no, tendons, that's it, tendons. Even people with kind of eye issues, thyroid, epilepsy, the straightening of the spine. So I think it was Richard Vobes that read out a testimonial from a lady that had a snapped neck at birth. And so, but she'd in 4 days, the spine had moved back. I mean, it was horrifically painful for her for the first day and she went back to bed. But on the 4th day, she was able to touch her spine with her left hand. She'd never been able to do that.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
But on painkillers the whole life, and she'd sat on her nerves and they'd all gone offline. So when they came back online, that was the excruciating side of it. But
you have to go through the pain, don't you? That sometimes when things are getting better, it's like, the pain is a part of that, of the healing process. Or sometimes we suppress it going, I don't want to feel the pain, but that's what a lot of our medical interventions do, don't they? They sort of stop the healing process, which...
And sleeping pills are a really good example of that, actually, because what you do is you don't actually get that deep sleep with the sleeping pills, and so it actually physically stops you from healing, which I thought is just it is seriously criminal.
And how did that I think I heard you or I heard someone saying that. I said, we don't realize how important, even the stress, isn't it, and constant doing that's what I sort of learned after cancer as well, is only when I was stopped in my tracks could my body start to do what it needs to do, but it can't do it. When we're all so stressed, running, busy, your body doesn't get the time. The body can heal from anything, can't it? I truly, really can, in the right environment.
Yeah, we're bombarded. And it wasn't until I was doing the blood tests last year that I saw how clogged up everybody's blood is, because we're constantly bombarded by, the microwaves, the radio waves, the Wi-Fi, And then there's so much in our atmosphere, and the hydrogen, because we are 70% overall water, we're 99.9% water when you zoom in to each cell, you know, because we are literally 99.9% water, but then we're also ether, we're also plasma. And so this affects the mitochondria, which is like the powerhouse of the cell. So it's like the body can get on what it needs to do just with ease. So it enables the body just to work, because also our atmosphere is condensing. So the electromagnetics are becoming more and more intense. And so what I feel this does is that you just absorb the electromagnetics from it into the body as to where it's required. And so the body is really good at then just moving things, you know, like the mycelial network. There isn't a heart issue or a kidney issue or a liver issue. It's a water issue. And
Yes.
water then is our blood, you know, it's the way in which then that kind of flows around the body. Cayenne pepper for certain people, you know, is a really good idea these days. But the hydrogen water, the minerals are so important, because so many people just don't mineralize or have fulvic minerals, or coming off the knowledge about coming off pharmaceuticals or drugs and things, you know, is selenium and fulvic minerals. There's high doses of those, or you could do there's a book called the Niacin, The Real Story. And you can take high doses of B3, which is the niacin, and that you can come off drugs, either pharmaceuticals or normal ones. And then the Bob Beck also does this brain tuner that resets your, I call them dolphins, but I always confuse myself, but it's the endorphins, that's it.
Oh, the endorphins, yes.
Yeah. Because once you take drugs and things, especially the hardcore ones, your body stops making its own endorphins. And so that can be turned back on within 40 minutes with the brain tuner.
Because it seems that that's part of the problem. Well, not we all know, but you know, the system, if you look back, isn't it? Was I always remember the Flexner report being mentioned to me years ago. For anyone who's never heard of it, I think it was in 1910, the Flexner report in America, which was when medicine changed from, you know, herbalism, naturopathy, homeopathy to the more pharmaceutical model, because it was sort of, that's where the money was. And I'm not writing off every pharmaceutical drug, but you can just trace what starts to happen. And then when you become so over reliant, I suppose that's the fears you're saying. How do I come out of some of the, like this? There is no other way. I'm on this now and I'm living and I'm surviving. So everything's great. It sort of keeps you in that system. So it's really good to hear you talk about ways that we can support ourselves, because out of fear and years maybe being on something that is giving a certain level of health, but not vitality. Like it's like keeping us alive as opposed to vital, isn't it? And that's the difference. For the first time in my life now, in the last years, I'm beginning again. I mean, I've a long way to go. Detoxing, coming out of old ways of being, of living, of everything. It's a detox, isn't it, on every level? That's what I'm finding, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And then you become vital rather than just alive. And
Yeah.
that seems to be a lot of your work, because you ooze vitality, Rachel. Like you're just, you know, you got to be, we wouldn't be too good now if you were lying there in pain telling us about all of these
I know, but
wonderful inventions.
when I was in pain, I wasn't
Yeah.
in I was off, you know, and I was dreaming what this world could be, and you know, imagining these connections and imagining, you know, just you know, like with these projects, because it's a lot.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about these projects as well. Sorry, I know I'm probably jumping around with you as well, because there's so much you're doing. So the projects you're working on now and your dreams for where you want to go with them, please.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like the energy side of things, you know, we have to be on the national grid and all this nonsense basically. And I think what I've understood really is that I'm sick of fighting. We just want to create new, basically. So we need to sort out the education for this country, but we need to start somewhere. So I'm you know, it's a loan of a lot of money basically. So I want to take over Tartaria buildings to re-energize the etheric capacitors, which is essentially the free energy. So if you look on like the spires of churches or castles, or there was originally, and some of them have had them taken off. And Buxton in Derbyshire is a really good example, because they've kept all the original electromagnetic capacitors to catch the energy and transmute it into energy, free energy, essentially. That's why. So basically, it was I watched this thing it's called the Integratron, and it's a way in which you can collect. So
A few words that I've never heard.
I love the word. I mean, Integratron.
No, that sounds like Rick Rubin. Sorry, I don't know if you ever heard. Is it Rick Rubin in America? He's got in grammaton or something like that. He's some sort. He's a creative. Sorry, I won't go off on that. But he uses a word in grammaton, something like that word. And
Yeah.
it's things he posts he put up, and they're always disappearing. He has a podcast. He talks a lot about creativity. I think he's a well-known creative or a producer or something in America. But just the way he thinks is and talks about creativity is amazing. In
Yeah.
grammar, yeah. Sorry, go on.
No,
So
I think on the body design, but no, what was it? The body, what was the human
the
design?
human design, yes.
I'm a manifestor fire starter, so I think I'm just here to ignite people,
Well,
literally.
you do that. You're
Yeah.
igniting me today speaking to you. But I also have your primer cube beside me. And I said, before I came on, I was feeling a little sorry for myself because I have a bit of a sore eye and I was a bit tired. I went, my God, I feel very energized. It must be the primer cube and
But
your fire starter influence.
and consciousness is contagious, you know.
Yes,
And
yes.
the colloidal silver definitely for this for the eye, and
Mm.
keeping things natural around it, like silk and cotton and things.
Mm.
If people have weepy eyes, and I mean, I'm going to do I was thinking about this on my drive home yesterday, because I went out journeying anyway. But I was thinking I need to do a video of what's helped me. Now, it's not to say it
Yes.
helps everybody else, but I do, I've got to learn so many different amazing things, because emotionally, physically, we're all in different places, but we can all learn from each other certain things, or it might just spark an interest in something that, oh, that's an interesting rabbit hole that I haven't gone down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that the PrimerField bowls magnetized all this amazing stuff, and then working with etheric energy and understanding, trying to understand it, because all this knowledge has been hidden. So it's only through kind of understanding it from different stories, and I think that is the best way to portray something, is with a story. But when I watched this little, I mean, it was literally 15 minutes on this Integratron, and what it could do is an etheric capacitor. Essentially, it's got these huge coils, copper coils, in the building, and it's like a dome shaped thing, and it's got this platform around it, but it's also used as a portal. So you could build one here and on the moon, and as you walk through this portal, you just reset all your body, all your cells. So it's like, okay, so that's the next kind of med bed then. So okay, but I just happen to know the team, or know a person that was helping build it. But of course, it was built in the time that it wasn't aligned with the stars. It wasn't aligned with where we were with humanity. I mean, we are the biggest show in the galaxy, or the
It
universe,
seems
whatever
to
it
be.
is.
Yeah.
All eyes on humans, kind of, or whoever we are, the beings on Earth. And creating this new world is because
How
I
do you see this new world? So in your vision, in your mind's eye, what does it look like? In a
oh,
typical day, what would it be like?
it's fun, and it's working through things. So I wanted to, so one of the things that we're going to build is this, or 4 festivals a year, basically, the Field of Dreams, because we're working on the trust. There's the birth certificate side of things that we're working with somebody to just like resolve all of that. So when we borrow the money, it just gets paid off instantly. And then the money then from the projects that were created, then start putting more money into helping more people actually follow their dreams. So for young souls, or for people that haven't gone through much trauma, they've potentially forgotten what they love. And it's not a problem, because what we're going to use, and it's very good at this, and some people might be completely against it, and I completely appreciate that, AI, or EI, emerging intelligence, or artificial, is really good at teasing out of people, you know, things that they love and finding out. So we could use that, and we're going to do an installation of how to tease out of people what they love, and
Oh,
then the next.
wow. That sounds phenomenal. Sorry, that's phenomenal. Remember what you love. Because often people will go, but I don't know. And it can, and it can be easier said than done. And you might go back, sorry, go back to your childhood, but maybe if it was very traumatic, you might have blocked it out and you can't remember. There's all this, it isn't always as simple as that. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. So continue with that. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. That will just change the world in itself because,
Yeah, that's just one of the
won't
things.
it?
But also, I mean, yeah, and then for people that know what they love, then they can go on the progress of, how would they then put that into action? What would they do for humanity? How do we team people up, left and right brains, and that magic can really start to be created, and we can create this new world with ease. And I see it quite clearly, like education. If you ask children to create their own schools, and you can have maybe 10 different types of schools, and they can go and visit each one and find out which one they want to go to themselves, or they could just do like one for one semester. But 70% of what they're taught is just indoctrination, so we don't need 70% of it. But what we need is communities, and I call them like thumbprint communities, because every single
Mm.
one is full of individuals who are all completely different, and how we work together is then also uniquely different. So everything that we're doing, from the magnetic bowls to help people, we created the private research association so that we could put the money back into invisible energies, and understanding how can we further ourselves with this life. And so that's people that it doesn't they cost a lot to build, but some
Mm.
of the money goes then to helping us further and understand how we can better humanity. That's the joy of it, and that's what I'm so grateful for people's support and their love, for really wanting to progress humanity. Construction, how do we keep grounded? How do we keep insulated? How do we keep growing? How do we minimalize things, that we're not taking all this baggage from everywhere, and being with it. So when I grew up in Brazil, we used to go to the rubbish dumps, as because my parents did the Sunday school at the rubbish dump, and you'd sit on the logs and get bitten by ants and
Oh,
stuff.
God.
But the people at the rubbish dump, and I've never known such loving people that just wanted to give everything that they had. They had nothing, but they had so much love, and it was so beautiful. And it was a really lovely thing to experience as a child. Now, that at one point the police had moved in, and with their bulldozers, and they bulldozed everything down, and everyone that ran got shot down by machine guns. And there was this kind of, we arrived one day, and there was just this smell of death. And as experiencing all that, it was quite well, it doesn't, I don't know if I'd even, well, yes, it was traumatic, but I didn't know anything different. That was just what life was in Brazil, because it was dangerous. But these people, and experiencing their love, and their devotion to life, that everything was possible in some way. It was
Mm.
magical, absolutely magical.
Isn't
But
it seeing beyond just, someone might go, oh, yeah, but that's wrong. They shouldn't be living like that. But the sort of yes, you can look at things just on a surface level, but when you start to go beneath it, there's something deeper. It's like the astrology, or if, depending on how you want to look at life, you can open it up or you can shut it down, can't you? You can open it up to all these possibilities of what something is showing you, or you can just go, that's wrong, that's right, in a very binary way without
yeah,
getting. That's what you're sort of. Experienced that in India, and you go, it's wrong, all this wealth, and then but the people on the streets with nothing. I'm not saying that was right, but my God, they had a level of peace about them and love, And yes, it wasn't nice seeing them live like that, but there's always something, I suppose, we can take and see what they're showing us,
absolutely.
humanity as well.
Exactly. And
Can
and
be.
and I guess, that they will come across things for them to learn,
Mm.
we're all up in our individual stage. And I think it's awful the way in which they say, well, you obviously had a really good life, in your previous life, which is why you're now a servant to X. There's this kind of this weird
Mm.
psychology, and
Mm.
people
Mm.
actually buy into it. And you think, people don't necessarily question things that much sometimes. I've definitely always questioned everything,
But it's
and I
like the extremes, yeah, you have bringing us into maybe because I keep getting the message. I don't know how you see it in terms of communities that were really designed to live in very small communities. That to me feels more natural, tribal, sort of where, and you've probably heard of Michael Tellinger in One Small Town, is it? I think that's, I know there's lots of different models, but it
yeah,
just seems to be this idea where, and I heard someone else talk about another community. Yes, it just lit me up. I often get visions of it living like a small tribe. And as you said, everybody who remembers what they love is there doing it. And that is how all of those gifts. And I think of young people coming in, it's so important to nurture them because we're going to need whatever that gift is to create the world that we want, isn't it? Like if we can't do it unless it's such a tapestry, isn't it? Of very different, um, so unique to each person. Even if two people are good at something, it's still like, there is no other. If you look at an astrology chart, you say a natal chart, there is, even if two people are born a second apart, it's still not the same.
and they're probably in different locations, because then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the astrocartography. Have you ever heard of
I
astro?
have heard of Astro.
So
I don't
it's
know a lot about,
when
yes,
it's like the astrology side of things, but where you're physically born, you then
yes.
have a Venus line, you have a Jupiter line, you have your Saturn, and but if you follow your Venus line from where exactly you were born and where the line goes in the world, and if that line crosses over a city, it doesn't matter where in the world because we're all international anyway, but you will find your true love basically on that line. And I thought that was magical. People
Did
start
you
saying,
trace your Venus line back to
astrocartography.
your lockdown love? I
You
know.
can find it. You can find your astrocartography quite
Yeah.
easily, and it's probably I don't know how much people cost in order to, but you can just literally have a look at those cities. But for especially down, in these times, because a lot of people have split up with their loved ones. They've done a lot of growing themselves, but they're still on their own. And I think it's magical when people find love, and they have that opposite. I've got Tony, double Gemini, and he's my opposite. He's my grounding, and we've been able to blossom so much more together than separately.
Mm,
Because
yes.
yes, you are one, but we need love, and we need
Yeah.
to, help each other to learn to love ourselves again.
That's
Um,
a beautiful message. And I don't think, sometimes you think, oh my God, have you to do all this work on yourself to meet someone? And I don't think so. Once there's an open, if there's an openness and it's the right combination, you
yeah.
can work through stuff. So
And
yeah,
you attract the right person just at the right time anyway,
yes.
whether
Yeah.
it's restoring energy, whether it's restoring the buildings. We're all moving in a way in which we want to progress with life, and there
Mm,
is a magic in that moment of when you do feel inspired, whatever that inspiration is, follow it, follow your love, follow your dreams, but make sure that you surround yourself with people that make you feel good. That people either make you feel amazing or they make you feel like rubbish, and I move away from anybody that makes me feel rubbish or that I feel like I have to explain myself in order to, it's like just
yes. Yeah.
goodbye.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
think that
really
has been. It's just, yeah, it's the shift we're going through, isn't it? And sometimes it can be hard, and maybe there's something, because sometimes it's hard to walk away from whatever, it's not saying they're necessarily bad people, but it is part of what, yeah. I think when you follow, I think it goes back to what you said, Rachel, when you follow and remember what you love, you are supported. You just are. It's in a different way. I've always said it, and I keep saying it on the podcast. My life, I just left, I wouldn't say I was sort of ejected from my own life because I was a bit slow learning. And then it's been gradual. And to many people who look at it, this is the other thing I'd say to people, is it doesn't look necessarily like what we would have in the past judged as a successful life. You know what I mean? There's different ways of looking at it. So someone might look at me and go, that doesn't look hugely whatever. but it's been such it's the journey I'm on, and this is you're gathering everything you need, and it is about love and following your passion. There's just, doesn't it? And then we feed each other like a conversation like this, and for people who listen to it will, as you said, it will feed them. And there's always one person I found who will say something like, my God, there was just one word that person said, and it just, boom, and it set them off somewhere. And if
Yeah.
that's, we're all just lighting each other like, well, you're a fire starter. So that song
Well,
must be, who's the song? Is it from The Prodigy or something? Is it? I'm a fire
well,
starter. It's some
yeah,
punk
yeah, yeah. It
band.
was. It was Prodigy. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah, sorry, I'm going off.
I love the Irish accent. Absolutely adore it. But you live in just near Galway, or in Galway, where my great grandpa, and how history repeats, you see, because he had 91 bedrooms. He built an aeroplane in his living room, knocked the wall down to get it out. It was started as a project and ended up building the whole thing, knocked the wall to get it out, and rebuilt the wall. He started flying it over hedges, and he wasn't allowed a license because the war had broken out. But his house was taken over for a virus, and it was just, like 2020 was just this whole repeat, rinse, repeat, the a little bit of history repeating, the song. But it is literally exactly that, because they took over his building, 91 bedrooms, and then they demolished it just in case there was any strain of the virus. And then they built 6 hospitals in its place, or however many hospitals it is, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
well, yeah,
it's huge, but it's in Galway in
yeah,
Ireland.
that
And
must, yeah.
yeah, and it's so that was my great grandpa's house, and I'd love to take over the whole thing again, and then we can build healing places as well. I mean, I had this vision years ago. I was doing these top 1% courses. It ended up being quite soulless, and people just driving towards money, which I don't, yeah, I'm not really aligned with that specifically. But I had this dream that I was flying over with a helicopter, and all these so there were these high rises, and every single floor had different colors, and they were all creative kind of floors for different things. And I thought this was the future, definitely. And
Mm.
I'm learning to fly the helicopter now to cure my fear of heights, but that's another story. But and it's very exciting. But anything we can imagine is actually physically possible. So
Mm.
I imagine taking over those buildings and either destroying them or really creating beautiful healing retreats and, different things in different places. But the British Isles really need sorting out, because we've got horrific schools, we've got horrific work, we've got, people that have their labels. In fact, I got out of my label because, I'm a digital consultant, and everyone thought that was lovely. And I was a success in the family, because I'd been like this truanting kind of crazy person, and finally I'd got myself sorted. But I decided to rename that as I sing to chickens. So that's what I used to tell people when COVID came along. So we got all these chickens, and they loved being sung to, as do, oh my God, do you mind if
Mm.
I just,
No, 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 do please.
so there was this a lovely, beautiful presentation I saw by this Japanese chap, and he had the polytunnel full of tomatoes, and it got a hole in the polytunnel, and all these tomatoes had got blight, and so he decided to go and find out what he could do to fix this. So these farmers had said, you need to burn the whole lot and never plant the same thing ever again in the same place. So he thought, okay, well, that's not very good. Anyway, so he went back, and he decided not to do that. He decided to have a serious word with his tomatoes. And then he asked the soil to support the tomatoes. And a few weeks later, there was no blight left at all. And the tomatoes, the new root, new sprouts had started growing. And he took those tomatoes and he did a demonstration basically so he'd used the same technique over and over again. So this was obviously years later, but he was doing this talk, a tiny little tent, like just the smallest amount of people heard this. And he did this strength test. So he had people basically holding their hands down here, and
Mhm.
he would press on them, and they all of them, different types of people, big, small, didn't matter. They all fell over. And then he put one of his tomatoes up their sleeve. Now, he didn't use any compost, he didn't use any manure, he didn't use any electroculture, he used nothing. And basically he then did the strength test again. He couldn't budge them. And basically, you know, like the biodynamics, I mean, they're all amazing, and the electroculture. In fact, I've seen strawberries flowering and bees around, you know, in January. You know, it just defies everything. It's brilliant, and I love this. But the strength, you know, he couldn't budge them because of the energetics that had gone into those plants. Because we, you know, Dr. Emoto, Vida Austin, they all show
Yeah.
us the
Look
power
them
of
up,
plants.
anyone, if you haven't heard of them. Yeah, particularly Vida Austin on the water. Once we really get that, incredible.
Oh, just absolutely phenomenal. Dew, you know, rainwater, the way in which we can structure any water, you know, you literally, I mean, you can restructure water with the magnets as well, or you can pour it from glass to glass to structure it. And you give it love, you give it gratitude, you know, and the different words have different empowering physicalities. But where has this water been in the first place? Has it been through other bodies? Has it been through other souls? And you know, the magic of everything. But I thought it was fascinating that this guy, you know, he just used meditation and singing with his plants, and that's all he did. And the magic that then can come from that, phenomenal, you know. So we can take care of it. So that's what I want to do with food. I want to change the way in which we grow food. I want to change, you know, because I was we were doing really well with the magnets and helping more and more people, and thanks to, you know, Mark Atwood, to Richard Vobes, you know, because they've built up these beautiful audience,
Yes.
people that
Yes.
want to learn
Yeah,
different.
exactly.
I'm so grateful. But you know, the possibilities of how we can change our environments, and how we then energetically just absorb that. You know, I think I was telling you off screen, wasn't I, that there was this chap that had this X-ray, and he had 2% of his brain left. Yeah, he could talk, he could walk, he could eat, he could function completely normally. He had 2% of his brain, you know. And then there's other people that have no left and right hemisphere, that it was one brain, but they can create their own portals and walk through them. It's like,
Incredible. But it's just showing what is the function of the brain. I've often thought, I've heard different ways of this. To me, it's almost like a, you know, we've put so much, what would you say, attention on the brain and the power of the, but it's not, it's like a processor really, isn't it? And it's like what is coming through is not just coming through the
yeah,
brain, I think, isn't it? It's so much more than,
a little bit. I guess I always, you know, like we're I think the version of we're the walking trees. So you know, the trunk, and then, you know, that there's the
the,
roots that go down,
mm,
and then it's as above so below, or as below so above. I love that one instead.
mm,
But we are, so the trunk is like the vortex. We are
yes,
the vortex. So we have our etheric branches, but this is like the core, the top of the tree kind of thing. And then
yeah,
when we meditate and we ground ourselves, you know, like we were, so myrrh is your grounding oil, and your frankincense is your kind of higher vibe, energetic kind of oil. But so we are the vortex within that. But I do feel that, yes, they can, you know, kind of experiment, and they can see all these synapses kind of firing off and everything. But I think they then go into our little additional trees,
yeah.
you know,
We're
whoever we are.
antennae, sort of, aren't we? I heard that we're like antennae, and we plug ourselves into the planet and into the earth, you know, particularly with, I think, what's happening now. That's where we absorb this energy life force that, you know, we can sort of transmit out, but we need to be connected, don't we, on the earth. So wow, I could talk to you all day, Rachel. Just everyone listening, I mean, you get a flavor of whether you're listening or watching of. I always feel it's not even down to, it is down to the conversation and what the person is saying, but what you feel from what they're saying is really what's so key, because hopefully it lights you up in your life to go, whoa, I feel so energized. I need to go off and maybe I need to look at the primer cube, or maybe I need to look at water, or maybe it's something completely different. But I think we're all reminding, I don't know how you feel about this, but this for me with the podcast, we're all as Ramdas says, we're all walking each other home, but we're all waking each other up on the way, on the way home and reminding each other of what is possible. Like you've reminded me of so much today that I know I'm remembering, it's not that's, I think, the magic. It's not like, oh my God, this is something new. I'm really interested in the ancient, I don't know, I don't want to go off on a whole other tangent now, but just the ancient ways and wisdom being reawakened in us. Because I don't know if you feel, I feel that very strongly at times with my ancestors in a whole other way. Do you feel that's a big part of what's happening now?
Yeah.
This
No,
ancient wisdom coming.
yeah, but
Mm,
but everything that's happening with the stars, this is the time.
yeah,
You know, we are the biggest show of the universe at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
eyes up on Earth. Everything energetically is lining up for us. And one of the things that these actually bring is that people are able to focus more on their journeying. They have better lucid dreaming, they have better visioning and more stability. They make better choices and things. But I think if you think about things that make you laugh until you cry, something that you find so funny, and then something that emotionally, like a piece of music or a thought that just makes you, so joyful that you do want to cry, or something that, but you can marry those two, and then, what can you then do for humanity? Um,
Mm,
all these things that are conjured up, and we are triggered in certain ways, and there's nothing good or bad, there's only thinking that makes it so. But we are getting these downloads, and I learned the circular breathing in my lucid dream, because I was asking myself, I mean, there's all sorts of things that I still don't understand. I was asking myself recently, what am I dreaming about? Because I'd gone through a period where I just couldn't remember my dreams. And I woke myself up and I sat up and I said, I'm soul hopping. And I woke myself up saying I'm soul, but I have no idea what it means. I have no idea. It's just another journey, it's another rabbit
mm.
hole for me, pretentious. Yeah, we're always learning new things, and if we can ignite that passion, if we can ignite that smile, just a smile, the smallest things. But laughter is so beneficial. I mean, laughter is the best medicine. And I was teaching my nephew and niece yesterday. I said, laughter is the best medicine. I said, for people that are really ill, they just need to watch funny movies all the time to make them laugh.
Yeah, that's so
I
true.
know, and they were, oh, I'd not heard of that before, and
Yeah.
possibilities are everywhere, But the PrimerField bowls are buy two get the third free. If you
Okay.
want they're £175 each, so you can get three essentially for £350. And we do really appreciate, everybody has their own story, and
Yeah.
you can
Like
you
I'm going to pass one on. I said I had I don't know if I said it on camera, but I have a friend who had a wisdom tooth taken out. She'd an awful lot of pain, and I gave her the primer cube, and she did use it at night. The question I wanted to ask you as well, so I have it under my pillow.
yeah.
She used it under her pillow, and she definitely said, the pain really reduced because she had a lot of pain from it. And you
Mm.
had mentioned before in one of your videos, I can't remember which, about having a stand, or this
Mhm.
is what I wanted to ask you. You can get, is it because depending on where the pain is, you might want to angle it, wouldn't you? If you're not carrying it around. So what is it you
Absolutely.
suggest? Is it like a lap? I can't remember exactly what you
So
said.
on the so it's how to use. There's a video on my YouTube channel, and everyone gets links to the YouTube channel when you get one. So there's how to open it, because it is
Yes, I watched that one. It is quite, that's a little bit, yeah, you would want
it,
to hurt yourself, but they're
but
they come beautifully packaged.
yeah, no, thank you. But they have to be sealed so much through the post, and they're very strong. So each one will lift nearly 3 kilos, and there's 40 of them all pointing up to one point, which is now for a toothache, because you can. It depends on if you've got any fillings and kind of amalgam fillings and things, and it doesn't affect that. But what you can do is just angle it, because there's always like a little sweet point, and it would sometimes it creates a little bit more pressure, and then there's just this sweet spot, and because it's very finite, this point.
Mhm.
because all the magnets come together. But what was the
You
question?
were saying about a stand you can get.
Oh, that's yes, yes.
Where you
So
the
on
laptop stand or something.
yeah. So on the video how to use your PrimerField bowl, there's a way in which you can, so it comes with screws. So you know these they're like phone or tablet stands, and they're like they've got the ball joint in them. Basically, it's a long silver ball, and people think that I supply the ball bit, but it is actually part of the stand. So I take the ball bit off the stand, and then I attach it to the different screws, and I show you in the video how to attach
You do.
both the silver the ball shape thing to the screws, and then because I mean they're quite heavy, and
Yeah.
it's for a female's wrist, to hold it in one place for ages, but yeah, so it can be really useful if you're doing it for your heart, because magnets can also help repressed feelings as well,
Mm,
emotions. People have used
yes.
them in therapies to um
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
get
because
those.
it's funny, ever since I've had it, and I was bringing it everywhere with me, and then I stopped for a while, and then I'd had it on the couch, I think sometimes in the evening, and I could just feel, I can't even describe it, but that energy, there was something really, just a lovely feeling like of pulsing nearly through me or something. And there's definitely been a lot of release of emotion, Rachel. So I don't know if it's all.
Oh, I'm
I have to
glad.
do
Oh,
it in waves. I have to do it in waves. But it's so powerful. I'm going to put the link anyways in the description box here. So do check them out. Very powerful. And I think you just put up a new testimonial video. I also put a link to Rachel's YouTube channel because it's brilliant there. You have lots of videos with testimonials, and also you put up a new one, I think yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday, the other day, just talking about some of the stories of what it can help with. That's
yeah.
really, really powerful, just to give people a sense of, yeah, what's possible. I think that's really what you're opening us all up to in every way in life. So thank you for opening me and all the listeners open to the possibilities in life. Greatly appreciated and so
And
grateful to talk to you. Yeah, really
thank
enjoyed
you
it.
for all your work, because you don't always kind of link with everybody, and so to have all these beautiful different people that you have, and to share
Yes.
all this information, because every time you speak, and we said this before the show, but every time we speak we become vulnerable, and it's
Mm,
so important that we do become vulnerable with each other, and we do express ourselves, because everything is very raw at the moment, and there is so much bombardment, that if we tell our truth, if we tell our blue throat chakra, whether it is blue or throat chakra, then we can actually empower each other so much more within this life, and the magic of possibilities is endless, literally.
magic of possibilities is endless. It
So
absolutely
thank you.
is. Yes. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for listening. Do check out the Primer Field. I keep saying the name wrong. Primer Cube Bowl, isn't it?
Primer field bowl, yes.
Primer Field Bowl. Sorry, bowl.
It's
That's my funny the way my mind works. And until the next time, thank you everyone, and take care. And thank you, Rachel.
not